The Adventures of David Perkins. Like, subscribe, comment.
At the southern and southwestern side of the Temple Mount is the Jerusalem Archaeological Park. The Archaeological Park is home to remains from the Second Temple period. Located here were a great many shops selling everything one would need to make a successful offering at the temple. The area is full of mikveh used by the inhabitants to ritually cleanse themselves before walking up the steps to the now sealed off Hudalda Gate and onto the Temple Mount. However, on the 9th of Av in the year 70 of the Common Era, the Roman army under control of Titus Flavius Vespasianus Augustus, the son of the current emperor, Titus Flavius Vespasianus, sacked the city and destroyed the temple. The destruction of the temple, unlike the city, was accidental, as Titus, the son, had intended the Temple Mount, which had only recently been renovated by King Herod the Great, to be converted into a temple to Vespasianus. The siege of Jerusalem, which should have been swiftly concluded, had rapidly become a stalemate. Rome had been unable to breach the city walls, and so made camp around the edges of the city. They then built a ditch around the city and a wall as high as the wall of Jerusalem's. Anyone trying to leave the city was executed and put on display facing the city. A drainage channel runs under the archaeological site, and when excavated it was found to contain evidence of those who attempted to escape the city, but had unfortunately been met by Roman soldiers. The siege continued for 7 months until the Roman forces finally breached the city wall. Writing at the time, Joseph ben Matthew declared that 1.1 million people were killed and or executed, with nearly 100,000 taken captive, nearly all of whom would later die in the arena. With the Roman occupation of the city had come the complete destruction of the temple. The Romans restricted access to the Temple Mount, and so the population began to pray at the compound's western wall, the wall that had been closest to the temple before its destruction. The Romans later renamed the city Colonia Aelia Capitolina and set about greatly remodelling it, building a grand 22-metre wide cardo at its centre. "4 years before Jerusalem fell to the Roman army, a group of Jewish rebels called the Sicarii captured the hilltop fort of Masada. Masada had been made a fortress some 100 years earlier by Herod the Great. King Herod had 2 palaces built on the plateau and protected it with fortified walls. The only access to the top was by 3 narrow winding paths cut into the mountain side. The Sicarii rebels would hold Masada for 7 years until the Romans laid siege to Masada in the year 73 of the Common Era. The siege would be the Jewish rebellion's last stand in what became known as the First Jewish-Roman War. Lucius Flavius Silva, the newly appointed military governor of the Legion Ex Fretensis, was charged with capturing Masada. Lucius first sent a message to the rebels to surrender quietly, which naturally they declined. So he then set about building camps around the mountain to ensure no one got in or out. Lucius used around 6,000 Jewish prisoners to construct a ramp large enough to take a battering ram. The ramp was completed after only 3 months, and on the 16th of April in the year 73 of the Common Era, the Roman army, led by Lucius Flavius Silva, breached Masada's walls. Once the soldiers entered the city, they were not greeted with resistance, but a silence. The 960 remaining occupants of Masada had chosen to commit suicide rather than fall into Roman hands, bringing to an end the First Jewish-Roman War. In Jerusalem, to the east of the city, is the Mount of Olives Cemetery. This hillside has been a Jewish burial ground for at least 3,000 years. Currently, there are around 250,000 identifiable individual burials on the hillside. A great many people wish to be buried here, as it is said that it is from this hill that the Messiah will appear and resurrection of the dead will first occur.